Hey there, readers. Welcome to my library. Today, we're going to learn about Bram Stoker, the author of one of my favorite books, Dracula. And in fact, we're actually going to learn a little bit more about the setting of Dracula than about Bram Stoker himself. Stoker was born on November 8, 1847 in Dublin, Ireland. He spent most of his adult life in London. He managed the Lyceum Theatre in London for many years. We're going to focus today on Whitby in the north of England. This is the setting for part of Dracula. In 1890, Bram Stoker first came to Whitby, England for holiday. He stayed in the Crescent, which is this set of buildings, and you can actually rent out the specific house that Bram Stoker stayed in. Whitby is a port town, and at the time that Dracula was written, when Bram Stoker was visiting, fishing was the main source of income there. The town sits on two bluffs with a river in between. Up on the east cliff is the Whitby Abbey, which you can see in the background in this picture. This is the seawall, and in the story of Dracula, the ship, the Demeter, tries to get through this when it's being powered, it seems like only by the captain who's dead. As the story goes, when Stoker was visiting Whitby, he visited their library and he talked to many old sailors and heard stories there. According to legend, while he was in the library, he read about Vlad the Impaler, upon whom he based the character of Dracula. There's also a local legend that the sailors at the time loved to tell about a ship called the Demetrius. It was a Russian ship, and it had trouble getting into the port because the captain wasn't dead like in the Book of Dracula, but he was drunk. Here you can see the opening of that port and how difficult it would be to steer a ship in there. This picture is looking toward the west cliff, and just behind the block of houses that you can see is where the Crescent was located. So when Stoker stayed here, he had a great view of the ocean and of the river, and could easily look down upon the town. On the east cliff are the famous 199 stairs. These lead up to the churchyard. In the book Dracula, they carry the sea captain's coffin up these 199 stairs. In reality, because the church was located at the top of these stairs, when someone in Whitby died, they actually did have to carry their coffin all the way up the 199 stairs. The picture on the right, you can see kind of a stone bench there, and today people maybe pause as they're climbing those stairs and take a rest. This was actually where they would put down the coffin so the people carrying it could take a rest. Here's a look down the stairs, and you can see how close everything in Whitby is together. This is St. Mary's Church, which is at the top of that hill, at the top of the 199 steps. This area gets lots of wind straight from the sea. And as a result, many of the tombstones have become hard to read. It's almost like they've been sandblasted. When we visited Whitby, we were there in the evening and then the following morning. So we got to see lots of light and lots of shades of the sky while we were there. None of these photos have been changed to change that light. This is what we actually saw there. Here you can see another example of the sandblasting that occurred to the tombstones because of the way that they are so open to the sea winds. And it is very windy there. This is Whitby Abbey. The first abbey was built here around the 800s, and this abbey was constructed from about the 1200s to the 1300s. In the mid-1500s, when Henry VIII left the Catholic Church to start the Church of England, he had most of the Catholic monasteries destroyed. The roofs were torn off of them, and that's what's happened to Whitby here. He sold the property to friends of his. Many of the stones from Whitby Abbey have been carried away and built into a house that's nearby on the grounds. You can see, even though Henry VIII tried to destroy the abbey, much of the ruins are still there, and people visit it to this day. This gives you an idea of how large the abbey is. This is a picture from the West Cliff. In Dracula, there's a scene in which Mina, who's staying in the Crescents with her friend Lucy and her mother, sees Lucy across on the East Cliff. She sees a red glowing light that she thinks must be a reflection of the sun sitting off of the church windows. She runs down the West Cliff, across the bridge, and up the 199 steps to the East Cliff to St. Mary's Churchyard, where she finds Lucy laying on a bench. Near the entrance of the churchyard, there's a tombstone for a man whose last name was Swales, who was a sailor. Now we know he died too early for Bram Stoker to have actually met him, but Bram Stoker did meet some sailors sitting on the benches in the churchyard, and he certainly got the name Swales from this tombstone. Bram Stoker, of course, is best known for his book Dracula, but he also did write some other books and short stories. Recently, a book has been published, The Dublin Years, The Lost Journal of Bram Stoker, and the book Dracul. Both of these were written in part by Dacre Stoker, who's a great-nephew of Bram Stoker and who manages his estate today. I haven't read these two books yet, but they are on my Amazon wish list. The story goes that Dracul is a nonfiction story of Stoker's childhood and meeting somebody who maybe actually was a vampire. So the story goes. To put Stoker's life in perspective, from 1837 to 1901, Queen Victoria reigned in England. On November 8, 1847, Stoker was born in Ireland. 1861 to 1865 was the American Civil War. From 1878 to 1904, Bram Stoker managed the Lyceum Theatre in London. After his holidays in Whitby, which were from 1890 to about 1896, the following year, 1897, Dracula was published. In 1912, Bram Stoker passed away. Here are some of the sources that I used for this. A special thank you to the Lilly Teacher Creativity Fellowship, whose funding made this trip possible. If you enjoyed this video, you can also find my video of Chapter 6 of Dracula being read with the pictures. This is the scene in which Mina is visiting Whitby and describing it for the first time. Thank you for joining me today for our trip to Whitby, England. Keep on reading, and bon voyage!